Hello everyone and welcome to the Hockey Hub. Today we're doing another team preview and we're looking at the Arizona Coyotes. Now the Arizona Coyotes have kind of been a mess this offseason. There was obviously the whole Mitchell Miller situation, and I don't really need to get into that aside from saying that it's ugly and that they probably made the right decision in releasing the player, but they never should have drafted him to begin with. Totally terrible what he did, unacceptable, and yeah, he simply shouldn't have been drafted. So that was a big mistake on Arizona's part. And then there's the whole draft scouting thing of prematurely scouting players and doing their own combines and stuff, and that ended up costing them this upcoming year's first-round pick and a second-round pick. So Arizona really had a messy offseason, and I don't think it's bound to get a lot better, but we are going to start with what they added. The Arizona Coyotes didn't do anything too big this offseason. They signed Johann Larson and Tyler Pitlik, two bottom six forwards. Johann Larson is a solid player in his own right. He was a guy that, put in a lot of effort in his past places where he's played, but I don't think he's going to be a star or anything in Arizona. Just a hard-working forward, a player that, coaches really like, and fans should be enamored with his hard-working ethic, but not going to put up star offensive totals. Tyler Pitlik is another, solid bottom six guy, not much more than that, so it's not like Arizona really added a lot, which really hurts when you consider what they lost. Now, the Arizona Coyotes lost the big free agent forward in Taylor Hall. Now, I do understand that Taylor Hall was a rental for them, but still, considering what they gave up in the trade for him, just to lose him, it must be disappointing for the Arizona Coyotes management and fans. Taylor Hall wasn't the best fit in Arizona, and I personally didn't think he was going to be either. I found it kind of weird that Arizona was really pushing for him and ended up getting him, because I didn't think that they were necessarily in that cup contender level, and I didn't think Taylor Hall was going to be the piece that pushed them over the top either. So losing Taylor Hall hurts, but they also bought out Michael Grabner. Grabner wasn't a great fit in Arizona either, but it still kind of shocks me that they ended up buying him out. He's still a solid bottom six player. He's got very, fast wheels. He's a great skater and is always very dangerous on the penalty kill. They didn't qualify Vinny Hinostroza either, which is another move that kind of baffled me. Hinostroza has been a solid middle six player for the Arizona Coyotes, and it kind of came as a surprise when they just ended up choosing not to qualify him. They let Brad Richardson walk in free agency, and Richardson actually kind of had a solid season for the Arizona Coyotes. Sometimes plays that third line center role for them. So Richardson is it's another bottom six loss, but when you keep losing guys like this, it does affect your team's depth. These losses do pile up. They also lost Carl Soderberg as well, who was another kind of under-the-radar free agent. Soderberg played quite well in Arizona, put up good offensive totals for a very non-offensive team. So that's another loss. And overall, if you look at what they lost, they really didn't get a lot back in free agency, but they definitely lost a lot to free agency. Some of it by their own doing, by buying out a guy like Michael Grabner, or not even qualifying a guy like Vinny Hinostroza. Just some baffling management moves, in my opinion. Now, Arizona's top six is very middling, in my opinion. Connor Garland is a very solid offensive player that, in my opinion, could have a breakout season with 20 or 30 goals soon. He was Arizona's leading goal scorer this past season, so I think there is some potential there. Then there's Clayton Keller, who's kind of a mystery to me. They gave him that massive contract, and it kind of felt like they were paying in advance for his services, which sometimes is a good idea. But in this case, Keller really hasn't lived up to those high expectations. I'm sure if he played in a different system, a more offensive system, his offensive totals would be a lot better. But he really has struggled to provide a lot of offense for them. The same can be said for Phil Kessel in his first year in Arizona. Really had a disappointing year after some really good years in Pittsburgh. Kessel was kind of expected to be a premier offensive guy for Arizona, and he really wasn't that just yet. Derek Staphon is a solid two-way center, but if he is a top six center for your team, that kind of speaks to how, not so great their center depth is. Nick Schmaltz is the first-line center there, and Schmaltz is a decent offensive player. He can actually play well in his own end as well, so he's a solid two-way center that does have some 50 to 60 point potential in my opinion, but I don't necessarily think he has the makings of a first-line center. And then I guess another guy that would be in there would be Christian Dvorak. Dvorak is a solid player, kind of a middle six guy in my opinion, but not necessarily any standouts in this top six. Arizona's top four, on the other hand, is quite good. Oliver Ekman Larson is still a really good defenseman, even if his contract is a little heavy for what he provides. He is their captain and one of their best players for sure, so he is the leader of that blue line and of that locker room. And then Nicholas Johnerson is one of the better defensive defensemen in the NHL. He's only got 1 year left on his contract, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him after this point. And then I would have Jacob Chychrun in there as well. Chychrun is a very underrated young defender. I know a lot of Arizona Coyotes fans are very high on him. He has a lot of potential. And I think Chychrun is already a very solid blue liner, and in a couple of years will probably be Arizona's best blue liner overall. His overall game is really good, and I'm a big fan of Chychrun. And then I think Jason Demers is probably the fourth guy here. Demers has been a divisive player for the past couple of years now, but I finally think he's found a stable home in Arizona where he's been able to produce and kind of just keep his head down and play well without a lot of pressure. So overall, their top four is actually quite good, and is part of the reason why they were able to string together a good season this past year. Arizona's goaltending tandem is probably the best part of their lineup in my opinion. Antti Raanta is a very good backup, and I think on a lot of teams would kind of be the starter. The problem with Raanta is that he struggles to stay healthy. I think if he was able to stay healthy, he would be a starter, but considering how often he's injured, I don't think a lot of teams would want to take him on with that contract in the hopes of him being a starter for them, just because he seems to get a major injury every year. But Arizona's starter, Darcy Kemper, is one of the best goaltenders in the NHL, in my opinion. He's really found his home in Arizona, and he's played fantastic there. He was really good in the playoffs for them. I know he kind of got shell-shocked in the last couple games against Colorado, but he was the only reason why they were able to win a single game against Colorado, and was the biggest reason why they were able to beat Nashville. So I do think Darcy Kemper is a star starting goaltender, one of the top 10 goalies in the league, in my opinion. And he was floating around in trade rumors for a bit there, and I personally thought a team like Edmonton should have maybe looked into that, because I think Kemper is a very solid goaltender, and on a much better team could really put up fantastic numbers. But moving into Arizona's best players, I do think that Darcy Kemper is probably their best player overall. Kemper is a fantastic goaltender, but then I would have Oliver Ekman Larson, Clayton Keller, Phil Kessel, and probably Nick Schmaltz in there. I already talked about Clayton Keller and Phil Kessel, how they haven't been able to produce that much offense. I do think that hopefully their offensive total should bounce back a bit this upcoming season, but only time's going to tell. Ekman Larson's still a solid defender, but I don't know if he's necessarily a star anymore. He might be able to bounce back as well. It's kind of interesting to me how he hasn't played that well under the Rick Tocchet system, which is a system that should bring out the best in good defenders like him. And then Nick Schmaltz, once again, is kind of just a solid top six center in my opinion, but I don't really think he should be the first line center there. So Arizona's best players isn't exact, there's not a lot of star power there. I do think Kemper is the best of the bunch though. But moving into some players I want to talk about. Now I want to talk about Barrett Hayden. Hayden was a 5th overall draft pick and kind of does have the expectations to be the next best forward for the Arizona Coyotes. I'm a big fan of Hayden's overall game. He was fantastic as the captain of Team Canada at the World Juniors. And I think overall he can be a very solid forward. He definitely has the tools to do so, but I don't know if he's going to be able to reach that 5th overall pick potential. It was a bit of a surprise when they took him at 5th overall. I thought there were better players on the board at the time, like Philip Zadina or Quinn Hughes, but they decided to go with Barrett Hayden, and when you look at their center depth, it does kind of make sense. Hayden might end up being a top 6 center this year for all we know. Hopefully for Arizona Coyotes fans, he can turn into a star player for them. He definitely has the tools to do so. I also want to talk about Nicholas Johnerson. Now, Johnerson has been a very under-the-radar, solid defensive defenseman for the past couple seasons. His offensive totals are, nothing impressive, but it's his defensive game that really brings out the best in him. But he only has 1 year left on his contract, and I'm wondering if he might end up being a rental piece for a contending team at the trade deadline. In my opinion, I think Arizona should look at moving him at the trade deadline so they can get something back. I don't know if Johnerson's going to re-sign in Arizona. I would probably bet against it. Johnerson has been on cup-winning teams in the past, like Chicago, and as he gets older, he's probably looking for another chance to win again, and in my opinion, Arizona probably isn't the place to do so. But then I want to talk about their captain, Oliver Ekman Larson. Now, Ekman Larson was another player that was in a lot of trade rumors this offseason, and apparently he only wanted to go 2 places, Boston and Vancouver, but both teams really didn't have a big fit for him. I think Boston made a bit of sense, but they didn't really have the cap space or assets to take him on for what Arizona was asking. So Ekman Larson, I think, kind of picked those teams because he knew that they were 2 teams that probably a trade wouldn't have been able to go through. He does want to stay in Arizona, but I kind of question the character on that. Arizona is not going to be a great team for the next couple of years, in my opinion, so he's definitely choosing to be comfortable rather than to win. So for things I like in a player, that doesn't necessarily jive with it. I do respect, the loyalty to the city and everything, but when the team says, we want to move you, we get your captain, you've been great for us for years, but we feel it's best from the team if we move on. I don't know. I think it kind of seemed like a not so great character move to say no. I don't want to go anywhere, especially from the captain, who should always have the best interest of the team in mind. So I don't know how I feel about the whole Ekman Larson trade rumors. I think it probably was best interest for all sides if he was moved this offseason, but Ekman Larson refused to let a trade go through, and I think it probably hurts Arizona in the long run. Now, even after all they lost this offseason, I would still say that the Arizona Coyotes are a bubble team. I did think about putting them in the rebuilder status, but I think they're definitely in a position where they have to try and contend this upcoming season. The loss of their first overall draft pick for nothing really hurts. If they end up being a bottom team, that draft pick is just going to go to nobody. So it's not like they got nothing back for it. Instead, all they got was to scout prospects prematurely, and it's not a good look for the franchise. I do think that their goaltending and defense is enough to kind of keep them in that bubble territory, but I definitely wouldn't say that they're a contender. Their offense simply isn't good enough to be a serious threat, and I think the best case scenario for the Arizona Coyotes is probably still a first-round exit. So I would definitely have Arizona as a bubble team. I don't think they're going to make it either, but there's still a chance when you got Kemper and that solid defense. But that does it for today's video. I appreciate you guys watching till the end. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you guys later. Bye for now.